The next view that I want to discuss is going to be the middle view. And in fact, some people call this the middle knowledge view of God. Have you heard of that before? Little nods if you've heard that. Maybe you don't know what it means, but you've heard that middle knowledge? It's a philosophical concept, but here's the idea, and this is interesting. Middle knowledge is the idea that God is unlimited in his knowledge, but perhaps limited in his control. Okay? So middle knowledge ends up being like a multiverse theory or a multiple worlds theory where God simply knows what would happen because he's omniscient in any given set of circumstances, but he's not necessarily determining what circumstances actually will unfold in history. So let me give you an example. Okay, you woke up this morning, you had breakfast. What did you have? Shout it out. What'd you have, Bill?
Sausage and egg.
Sausage and egg, okay. But what if you didn't, Bill? What if you had oatmeal? What if you had a granola bar? What if you had a bowl of Raisin Bran? What if you skipped breakfast entirely? Your day might be different, and if your day is different, then your week might be different. And if your week is different, then maybe your life ends up different, right? And so the middle view of knowledge is that God isn't controlling which reality actually obtains, which world actually comes about. It's simply that God knows every possible contingency. God knows what would have happened if he would have had a bowl of Raisin Bran instead of sausage and egg. So it's the idea that God knows every possible set of circumstances, but he's not necessarily determining which one will actually obtain in real history. Does that make sense? So you have a multiplicity of universes then. Now again, let's not straw man this view. Let's steel man this. Why would somebody hold to the middle knowledge view of God's sovereignty? Well, check this out. They've got Bible passages. So let's go to one of them that they would claim that would help to establish this rubric. So turn with me to 1 Samuel chapter 23. Go with me to 1 Samuel. This is very interesting, I think. I hope it's interesting to you. Now in 1 Samuel 23, David, as the heading of chapter 23 in the ESV says, David saves the city of Keilah from the Philistines. Okay? David saves the city from Philistine attack. Now, unfortunately for David, though, Saul is coming after him. And so David takes opportunity to pray to the Lord and ask the Lord what he ought to do. And it is here that the Lord tells David what would happen in a given set of circumstances. So look with me at chapter 23, and let's look at verses 11 and 12 here. David's asking the Lord here, will the men of Keilah surrender me into his hand? Will Saul come down as your servant has heard? O Lord, the God of Israel, please tell your servant. And the Lord said, he will come down. And then David said, if he does, will the men of Keilah surrender me and my men into the hand of Saul? And the Lord said, they will surely surrender you. Then what happens is David takes off. And so the set of circumstances that is just described here is not actually what happens in real history. But nevertheless, notice this, that God knows what would have happened had David stayed. If David had stayed in the city of Keilah, A, Saul would have come to chase him down there. And if Saul came to chase him down there, then B, the Keilites would have handed David over into Saul's hand. So God knows every possible contingency of what would have happened in various multiverse worlds that could have happened but actually did not. And so the middle knowledge theory suggests that this is true in all things, that God knows every possible scenario that could unfold, which is why God can make future predictive prophecies, because he knows what would have happened. But here again, we have to ask a few questions that I think destroy this view. Basic question, go back to Daniel chapter 8. What comfort would that be to Daniel? Same question. What possible hope, what possible encouragement, what possible strengthening of the soul is it if the ram and the goat prophecy is only telling Daniel what might happen in one possible world? Okay? What hope is that? What strength does that give Daniel? And then we must ask other questions that get really complicated. For instance, If this is possible, if this is one of the scenarios that may unfold, is it also possible that there's another world in which Alexander does not defeat the Persians? I would think that would be possible. Is there another world in which Alexander doesn't even live to 30 and he's defeated before he even makes it that long? I would say so. Is it possible that Babylon never hands over power to the Persians, and Persians never lose power to the Greeks, and the Greeks never lose power to the Romans, etc., so that the Messiah can't come? And this is where it gets really fatal, in my view, for the middle knowledge theory, in that it totally destroys our understanding of the unfolding of redemptive history. For instance, we could even ask questions that might seem a little to press too far. Is it possible that there is a world in which Jesus doesn't rise from the dead? Is there a world in which Jesus sins and can't be the atoner and redeemer of our sin for our salvation? Well, middle knowledge then opens up a Pandora's box of questions that it's not able, in my view, to put back in. And so here then we need to turn not to either the low or the middle view of God's sovereignty, but rather to the high view of God's sovereignty, which is the view that I would espouse, and I would hope that you would too. Now, the high view